Beautiful. We caught up on our schedule. So I'm calling John Howell, Greg Coleridge, Virginia Hammon, Yuli Kortsch, Sue Peters, Mark Pash, and Joe Bongiovanni to be ready, being part of the panel. And maybe they're made all co-hosts. Maybe that's not necessary. I think Alfonso can do spotlighting. So there are a few questions still that I collected for Mark Pash and also for Greg and Yuli. Let's try to get through those, and then we can put it open. Or actually, after that, I like to have Lucille rephrase her question because it's a pretty long question to Greg. But let's go in order.
I'm going to hang up so that if I have to answer, it's through my speaker here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just see Suit's bet, that's all.
All right. Question for Yuli Kortsch still. What are those achievable steps which will move us forward? So this is a theme continually, I think, with monetary activists. What's next? What is the step?
Incremental steps.
Well, one of the ones is a point I made just from the point of view of education, that debt creates money. That's one of the things. The other thing is I think we can do something incrementally when it comes to banking. And there was an attempt, I don't know if that's still active. I've been doing, for the last few months, I've been very active in something else that I had to do for a New York bank to basically be a truly intermediary bank and still have access to the Federal Reserve system. And initially that was rejected, and then that was reapplied. So it's almost like a mutual fund. It's basically what mutual funds work like, right? And I don't know where that state is at today. That's something else that can be done from an incremental perspective. Those are two easy ones. It's really terrible because I used to have quite a list of.
Can I make a comment on that?
Please, yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, if you know the big public offering, which I think they turned down from the Chinese fintech company, is that banking is all going to be on the phone. And they're doing, in China it's big, in Africa it's big, where they do basic banking. And they also do loan. Now they are connected to the banking system a little bit. So, but basically, the world is changing in this arena, and is a major factor of what's going forward. I'm not sure of it all either, we see the Capital One banking branches here as restaurants, and so they're going to be entertainment centers, just like our shopping centers are going to be. So the world is really changing fast, and COVID has accelerated it. Where all our banking is done on the computer, and if they can do it in Africa with all the out there in the bush, they can do it anywhere.
Yeah, but there's a difference between electronic manipulation versus money creation.
Yes, there is.
Yeah,
and they're attached to banks, but actually, in theory, because it's all digital, in theory, that's where this Facebook thing came in with his new thing. In theory, they on the side, they could create the money and you wouldn't even know it. In other words, they just push a computer bit and then they got an extra billion. And so it's a very interesting development. What's going to happen, I have no idea, but it's very. They could get into creation very easily and secretly. It's almost like counterfeiting, even if it's against the law.
Yeah.
You want to extrapolate still, Yuli, or you're ready for another question?
Yeah, that would be a major discussion.
I sure would.
Yeah, yeah. So it probably somewhat. Go ahead.
Okay, let's
with the
go
next
to
question.
next question. Okay, someone asked that, so previous speakers have said that central bank digital currency, CBDC, is the way of the future and will be stuffed down our throats. Your opinion.
My opinion, yeah, I think that's true. Am I for it? I have great hesitation. My concern isn't technical. My concern is control, human, the governmental control of individuals, and that's why China. I mean, Sweden and China are the most advanced when it comes to CBDC. The U.S., some Fed dollars are actually out there. I don't know if you're aware of that. I'm actually involved in that a little bit, but they're not in public circulation. It's all wholesale. The Chinese are actively working it because they realize through their social, what do they call it? Social numerical system, as to, they give you a grade, their social grading system. That's not what they call it.
Social credit.
Sorry?
Yeah, they do. It's close to it, though.
I think they call it social credit. You get credits for good behavior.
Yeah, I know. I really hate to use that because it's social discredit to a large extent.
You're right.
But CBDC fits right into their that system. And that's what scares me about CBDC. Do I think it's coming? Yeah, I do. Is it stoppable? No, I don't think so. It gives better control from a monetary perspective. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It is safer from a banking perspective. There's no doubt about that. If we were to have a major electronic event, then the whole system falls apart. We're back to paper money for a certain period of time. I'm thinking of was it 1859, the sunburst that ended up occurring, which would totally digitize us in the matter of a few minutes. And by the way, 2 years ago, we missed that by 19 degrees. Most people aren't aware of that. So this is the sun, this is the earth, and we had a major burst that missed the earth by 19 degrees. It would have been essentially the same as it was, I think it was 1859 when we had the largest event that we were aware of in the sort of recorded history. And the estimate was that we're talking several $1 trillion worth of damage, and it would take 2 or 3 years to rebuild it, for the simple reason we don't have the large transformers. We're only building 2 or 3 a year, something like that. It's the total capacity that we have right now. So anyway.
Well, my concern on digital, and I think when I read Uber's article, it was concerned. I mean, so what? It doesn't go anywhere. The key to monetary reform is distribution. Who gets that? Now, if they were going to create digital money and it went out as universal income, I would be 100% for it. Eventually, it's going to go to the banks anyway, because people deposit it immediately in the banks. In fact, the system would. So then they would have a little extra money to spend, and boy, would the economy take off. So my concern is always distribution. You need wide distribution, because the scarcity of money, where is the scarcity of money? It's in the hands of the poor. They don't have enough money to spend or save for retirement. And so it's the distribution of this new money that counts.
So Yuli, just to get a little further into that question, should monetary reformers resist and oppose central bank digital cash, or should we just accept that it's coming and then try to make it into a stepping stone towards full monetary reform? Because some people will make the case, like Edgar Wortman, that it would be like a partial monetary reform, because at least you got something of a sovereign kind of currency circulating through the economy. And the idea is that you then build on that, stepwise, till you might end up with a full sovereign system. So should we resist it, or just, like a Yuyutsi, just go with it, but then, direct it into the direction we want it to go?
Yeah, I would go for the latter because I just don't think I don't think there's any way of stopping this. So how do we create safety? How do we, in the distribution that Mark just mentioned, I totally agree. Although, I mean, one of the big study aspects is what effect this will actually have on banking. Depends on what kind of CBDC we do. So if we do the kind whereby individuals actually get accounts at the central bank of whatever country you're in, that could potentially destroy banking, depending on how it's structured. So there's some real questions there. But in my mind, to be involved in the discussion process and the security. Now, by security, I don't mean you losing your money, security of the government not being able to control who you are ultimately through the CBDC. That by far, that's my biggest concern. But because I believe it's coming, therefore, let's have a voice. And let's be, as Mark just said, from a distributional perspective, and that's, I mean, I'm my personal opinion when it comes to sovereign money is it should go to individuals, not to the government, and the government can receive that money through taxation. So you have an equalized distribution system, which ultimately meaning over a decade, 15 years, removes a lot of the inequality. Not totally, you're never, and I don't think any of us will, anyway, but
Sure.
that solves a number of different issues. But I would like us to be at the table discussing this, looking at the papers from both an academic perspective and a human person. It's the human side of it that concerns me, rather than how to do this technically.
I hear you. I got a request if Joe Bongiovanni or John Howell can address this too. Kind of, pro or con central bank money as a stepping stone towards full sovereign money system. Joe, why don't you start if you're still there?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, and we can
Okay.
see you.
I think Mark said something about, I didn't have the advantage, he didn't have the advantage of having his dad teach him about the monetary system. And I did. And when I did, one of the things that my dad warned me about repeatedly over and over were those things that are coming down the pike. They sort of smell like roses. They sort of look like they're going to get you partway to where you think you're going, but avoid them like the plague because they could very well turn out to be the opposite. And that's exactly how I see central bank digital currency. I mean, Joseph Huber, who's one of the people we most respect, and I put the question in the chat. Well, what problem exactly is CBDC, central bank digital currency, trying to solve that we have? We all know why we are monetary reformers, because we know the problem that we have with the system, the injustice, et cetera, the undemocratic rules of our society. But why are we going to do central bank digital currency? Because it's inevitable, because it's inevitable, because I mean, really, hey, what's the origin of central bank digital currency discussion? It's a freaking technical financial rig is what it is. Somebody trying to get another 0.001 cent on every transaction in the thing because it's a tech fin solution. No, I don't agree with Uli at all about that. I agree with Uli about a lot of things, but I don't agree with Uli about that at all. And I don't agree with anybody who, quite frankly, even Uli said, and even Edgar said, and several other people have said, well, it depends on how you do it. Well, how do you know how you're going to do it? How are you going to do it? How are you going to really make central bank digital currency into a sovereign benefit? Public money, we know what it is. Okay, the government creates it and issues it. Not true with central bank digital currency. Nobody has said that you can't do central bank digital currency until you not only own the central bank, but you actually have the ability to create and issue the money. Then let's talk about central bank digital currency. No, to go there right now, quite frankly, I'm appalled that right now, when the entire economies of the world are falling apart because of the lack of structure, of a workable structure. And we want to move to this thing that nobody understands because Microsoft thought about a half a dozen or more years ago that this would be a good thing that they could tap into to provide the technological platform to do it from. So to me, it's a crock, okay? It's a crock, and we should avoid it and we should oppose it. I think somebody put that question out there. So the fact that somebody out there wants to, what would we say, experiment, you know, with these, you know, peer-to-peer transactions to see how they work. You know, it's just appalling to me that we as monetary reformers don't have the foundation upon which to review this thing. And that's why I said a National Monetary Commission should be in place in order to take a look at it and what it means before we start making commitments or getting behind it as a good idea. It's a terrible idea, and it's a terrible time to be thinking about it. Over.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Yes. That's Yuli. Okay, Yuli, go ahead.
Looking at it from the perspective of the central bank and monetary control, that is why they're pushing it. So we're currently in a largely deflationary environment, and interest rates are useless, as has been said multiple times, and I totally agree. And QE is massively distorting from a poverty, wealth, equality, etc. perspective. So and listen, you need to hear me. I have deep concerns about CBDC. So don't walk out of here saying Uli Kortsch is in favor of this. But from a monetary control perspective, it will be very easy if we all had accounts at the central bank, or even if we had accounts at the bank that were CBDC, then the monetary authority of whoever that is, Fed, ECB, whatever, can very simply transfer instantaneously. You know, everybody gets $1,000, period. That's it. Boom, finished. So don't take that as saying I'm in favor of that. I'm saying that is one of the reasons why they're pushing it. I think there are some other reasons. But anyway, I just wanted to say that, Joe. So there are some arguments in favor. That's really all I'm saying.
John Howell, did you want to pitch
Yeah.
to this?
Yeah, I think the answer that Joe posted, the question that Joe posted, what is the purpose of, what's the problem being solved by CBDC, was really answered by Edgar. And I think Yuli has just said the same thing, that the problem it solves is for the central banks, who are now realizing they've lost control of the monetary system. And that's the problem it's solving. It has nothing to do with the kind of issues that we think ought to be solved, the problems that we think ought to be solved in terms of this extreme concentration of wealth and the persistence of poverty and the austerity of the public sector and the lability of the system, and most important, of the fact that we've got a system now, and that proposal doesn't change it, that depends on continued growth. And that's what's not sustainable.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I agree.
Shostak.
Sustak.
Okay. Yeah, hold on, guys, because we got 10 minutes, and I still want Greg, because there were some questions for Greg, and I like to, so there are two. One that I posed for Greg. Professor William Domhoff, eminent expert on the US power elite, makes the case that most of the big changes in the US happened because of a strong Democrat Union coalition. What is your impression on that? Because that idea has been in my head, like, you know, if you want to make big changes, we have to think about the Democratic Party, we have to think about unions also.
Yeah, I did respond to that in the channel, if you saw it or not. I do concur that labor and organized labor has historically, ever since it has been an organized entity, has been largely a force in promoting progressive social change, as has people of faith, people of ethical persuasions, and students. Democratic Party has oftentimes kind of been there kind of after the fact, forced sometimes to respond when they've not wanted to necessarily, the civil rights era in the United States for one. And so sometimes after being almost embarrassed, will run to the head of the line. But sometimes historically, they have also been a part of efforts to co-opt movements, Occupy most recently, anti-war efforts, environmental movements, because, and a large part because Democratic has in recent times become a conduit to big business. So yes, union definitely, although, you know, there's a business unionism, you know, union is not all one entity. There's a division between the top sort of corporate unions, business unions, and those that are more sort of focused to members, that are more internally democratic.
Yeah, that makes me think that Domhoff also makes the differentiation within the Democratic Party between corporate and the so-called New Deal. And that somewhere around Carter, there was the switch within the Democratic Party from New Deal oriented Democrats to corporate oriented Democrats.
Yeah, blue Democrats, they were called. And
Yeah.
Blue Dogs.
Blue Dogs, yeah. That's right.
Lucille, you had a big question also for Greg, so I call upon you to
Okay.
just
Yeah.
formulate it.
So I think the impetus of my,
There's maybe something of your volume because there is there's a singing.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, but there is kind of a high pitch that goes along with it.
Oh, I don't know if I can do anything about it. So if you don't want to listen to me, then you should move on.
Go ahead.
You know what? No, we'll get to it. Go ahead, Lucille.
Okay, so I think the impetus of my question, Greg, I respected and appreciated your presentation and your suggestion that we work toward, that all sort of movement, issue-oriented organizations, groups need to work towards expanding democracy. However, I find that a bit daunting, and I'm trying to understand the take-home message from your presentation for us. And, you know, in my out loud, you know, voice, I say, well, how do we work on monetary reform and have the time to work on monetary reform if we're also supposed to be working on expanding democracy? And by that, I don't simply mean, you know, the work that I know we have to do, coalescing with other organizations like Move to Amend has done, but to work on building democracy as our work seems beyond the scope of what we can do and still work on monetary reform. And the other part of your talk, where you said you were laying out what the elite do, and you said that they focus on defining rules and changing rules. And it seems to me that's what we are trying to do with regard to the money system, and that rule change enables all of the other, you know, issues out there in a variety of foci of movements, and that they should see that, and we should help them see that to create, because to me, it seems necessary to create the conditions for them to achieve their goals. So yeah, it felt like too much to ask us to work on democracy explicitly. We try to in our practice, but what's the take home message really for AMI and for AFJM from your presentation?
Well, very insightful reflections, and thanks for them. Sort of two-part as I glean what you have said. The one is how do you do both? And I think you've already done both, at least AMI, when several of you, yourself included, and others who were on this call, when was that? Gosh, it seems like such a long time ago, attended the Democracy Convention in
2017.
2017. So there was an example of where individuals from the monetary reform / transform effort, attended, were able to do the vertical work of doing a workshop, meeting with people, engaging, dialoguing, helping others get on the other side of the learning curve, but at the same time was part of something that was trying to expand things horizontally to say, wait a second, there are people who are coming here from all these separate individual places. There were, if you remember, different tracks where people were there talking about and sharing their knowledge, their expertise, their experiences on individual issues, but yet, and I don't know if many people who attended stuck around to the end, but at the very end of that convention, as there was those democracy conventions, there's what's called a people's movement assembly, where on the agenda is how do we build a democracy movement that includes all of these things. So that is a, that is an example of where you could do both do vertical and horizontal. And there's going to be plenty of opportunities, like maybe more digitally than in person, but it's like spending a little bit of time. And obviously you had to spend, we had to spend a little bit of time to take away from the exclusive monetary work to be ready for that and spend the time to go there and be part of that wider circle, if you will, that addressed more than just, and each group addressed more than just their respective issue. They were there with others to examine where are the potential linkages and what are the larger potential takeaways in which, how do we gain more power to affect the system? And so the second part of your question of, is this not monetary reform sort of a issue that transcends and connects others? And yes, it is, I would say, more than a lot of other single issues, but it still begs the question, how the hell are we going to do this? Where's the how do you gain the democratic tools to try to implement this? At some point, you've got to address, the rulemaking that I'm speaking to is the democratic rules, the governing rules, the rules that allow us to exercise our democratic muscles. And that is, certainly voting, certainly, trying, and then, but it also includes, trying to deal with the incredible power that many other speakers here today, and I presume elsewhere, have spoken about, the incredibly well-to-do individuals and organized corporate entities, whether they're banks or others. So that's, there's a lot of different sort of rule making that goes on within each of our individual issues. Healthcare issue, certainly the pharmaceutical companies and the hospital corporations are trying to establish their own rule making within their specific sphere. The kind of rule making I'm speaking about is sort of transcending, overlapping, or undergirding that addresses all of these issues. And that has to do with gaining individual citizen power that transcends any single issue area that will affect the ability of all of us to become more effective. I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Can I debate this CBDC thing for a minute?
Yes, but we're going probably into happy hour mode if we are terribly correct with our schedule.
Just one sentence. The Chicago
okay, one sentence.
The Chicago plan was designed to take the money creation from the banks. The central bank digital currency could do that. Kumhoff has said he thought it might be the little cousin of the Chicago plan. It's a first step. I think it would definitely be an improvement over what we have. We would be taking some of the control away from the banks, some of the bubble creation process. Minsky would I think support this kind of thing as well.
Okay.
Govert,
yes,
I'm a member of this panel. I've been trying to say something.
I know. One thing what happened was that nobody had a question for you. So
no,
but
I
she
had
has
thoughts about what people were saying.
Sue, we're going to a happy hour mode, and we have another 45 minutes then to discuss things, maybe
Can
in
you
a
let
less
Sue make her
regulated
point?
way, and we can give you the first hour there.
Take
but
my
Stephen-
point.
Okay, no, okay, Sue, just go ahead and make your point.
Okay. This is
Hey.
in response to the talk about CBDC. You have to go back to the nature of money, right? As a legal power. When I studied for the Federal Reserve Bill, you find out that whatever is issued by the Federal Reserve banks is debt to the government. That's what Federal Reserve's notes were. That's what reserves are. That's what I believe what CBDC will be. It's still a debt. So start talking about the Treasury issuing digital money. We have digital money now. It's all in the computers. It's the nature of money. It's not a debt. It's an asset. And I just want to make that point.
It's a good point. Good point.
Thank you.
You can look at it as positive money, and if if you have CBDC in the sense that you can have citizen accounts at the Federal Reserve, you can look at that as like a positive money, Sue, and you're right about that.
It's the nature, the legal nature of money.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe this conversation now deserves happy hour. We're a little late for Oktoberfest, but I do have a beer.
Cheers.
Mine's almost empty already.
Wow.
It was a great day, you guys. Excellent work.
Yeah.
Thank you, Covert. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Mike, and everybody else who had a hand in it. Rather than this, if you don't like the thing that appeared, you can scroll the little line to the left and see people's icons.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
If this video is helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe for new video notifications. Please consider donating at monetary.org/donate. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter at AMI Monetary or on our website